What's up?
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to episode 3 of Wrestle Recap. My name is Justin Tate.
And my name is Michelle Tate.
We are the only brother and sister duo that takes you on the journey of wrestling throughout the decades.
And Justin, we have a real great time doing it.
We do.
First, let's get into the past week in wrestling. You know, we got some current
a lot going
news.
on.
I know. So first, I know we talked about this last week being a rumor, but it is confirmed. CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre with Seth Rollins as a guest referee at SummerSlam. What?
It's going to be good.
Okay, so what do you think the significance is of Seth being the ref? Like, how is this going to come into play? Is he going to affect the ending of the match?
You know, it's like we've talked about in the past, how the main event scene, especially on Raw, is so interconnected and so many people have a problem with each other. And one thing that I thought about after we talked about this last week and then it was made official was that I forget which pay-per-view it was when it was Steve Austin against The Undertaker with Shawn Michaels as the referee.
I remember that.
And then Shawn goes to hit Steve with a chair, but Steve ducks and hits Undertaker, and then Steve ends up winning. And I almost think that enough time has passed, like 25 years or so, to where they could do something like that again and continue this storyline between the three of them and maybe more beyond the pay-per-view. What do you think?
Yeah, I could see that happening. I think, oh man, it's tough because part of me is like, Seth is going to help Punk win because he wants to go for Punk. But then part of me is like, oh, maybe he's going to help Drew win because he really hates Punk. So it's hard to tell. So who do you think is going to win this one? I have a thought.
I think with this being the first face-off between them, you could have Drew win this one. And then I'm assuming that we're still going to have a Hell in a Cell pay-per-view at some point this year. You could stick them in Hell in a Cell.
You could. So I think Drew's going to win this one because I think he needs a win regarding Punk. You know, Punk keeps costing him all these matches. And I think we have to get a win for it to be a healthy rivalry. Otherwise, it just looks like Punk always wins. And it kind of kills the interest. So I think Drew will win. Did you see that picture he posted on Twitter with Jack Perry?
Yeah, and that just took off all over the internet. And then Drew deleted it. So now it lives on, just not on his account.
Right. And I feel like he always had that plan to delete it to make CM Punk look bad. Right. It was pretty genius. So going on SummerSlam, Solo Sikoa versus Cody Rhodes. Now, I know a lot of the internet community is feeling a little underwhelmed. How do you feel about that match, especially if it's the main event?
You know, it's fine. I mean, I don't hate the new bloodline stuff. I think this does kind of lend to the whole idea that we're just waiting until Roman comes back to see what happens. But, you know, they'll put on a fine match. I don't think anybody's under any illusions that Cody Rhodes is going to lose the WWE Championship to Solo Sikoa. But stranger things have happened.
Yeah, I honestly would have really preferred Cody to wrestle one of the Tonga Tongas or something, because at least it'd be a little more interesting. I don't know. And I think that would have been a really good showcase for one of the Tonga Tongas. That's what I call all of them because I can't keep them straight on the Timu bloodline.
Yeah, but Paul Heyman is doing such amazing work in all of this, as he always does.
Yeah.
I love the fact that he's going out there not wearing any makeup. And he's unshaven and he just looks like crap and like he hasn't slept in a week. And that's why Paul Heyman is the genius he is.
I like how you just said that Paul Heyman in his normal state looks like crap. He just needs that makeup.
Well, yeah, I guess I kind of did, didn't I?
Right. Well, I know we're going to talk about those predictions later on toward the end of the show, but let's move on over to AEW. Now, MJF versus Will Ospreay II got announced for All In, which is coming up later this month. Man, so number one, who do you think is going to win? And number two, will it stay the American Championship or will it go back to the International? How do you feel about all this?
Everybody wants to see Ospreay get a win at All In since it is in Wembley Stadium. Originally, when people thought he was going to go against Swerve at All In. They wanted to see Will Ospreay get the win there. As far as the championship, I feel like this is one of those things, almost like when Daniel Bryan had that cloth version of the WWE championship, and then as soon as he lost it, they brought out the real one again. I kind of feel like it's going to become the international one again after Ospreay wins it, which I think he will at All In. What do you think?
Yeah, I do think Will Ospreay is going to win, especially because it's kind of looking like All In might possibly be in Texas next year or somewhere other than Wembley. They want a stadium show next year, and I know Wembley hasn't sold out the way it did the first year. So we'll see about that. But I almost wonder if they're going to kind of go in the direction they started to go with CM Punk. Then obviously, like, he got fired and left, where I wonder if MJF loses, he's going to hold on to the American belt because that's like what matters.
The real one.
I have a theory.
Yeah.
I think Will Ospreay will win because Adam Cole is going to cost MJF the match.
Oh,
That's
that could be
happening.
A lot of fun.
Yep.
That could be really good. Yeah.
I saw Adam Cole posted on Twitter the other day this picture of him and MJF's just smiling and he's looking at the title, and I'm like, you haven't posted anything in a while, sir. I just, and that idea got my head, and now I'm going to be disappointed with anything less.
Right. Of course. Of course. Your own booking is always the best.
Dude, I should be a booker. My booking, at least for AEW, is incredible. I'm just saying.
Well, I will. If you tweet Tony Khan, I hear he's on Twitter every now and then. So maybe he'll see it.
I've tried. He ignores me. All right, Justin. Well, what are we talking about this week?
We are talking about the first ever WWF pay-per-view, the one that kicked it all off, WrestleMania. But before we do, we got to go in the time machine. There it is.
I heard Pee Wee. We're good. We're here.
All right. I heard him. I heard the ghost of Pee Wee. We're good.
Oh.
WWF WrestleMania, aka the greatest wrestling event of all time. The date, March 31st, 1985, from Madison Square Garden in New York City, the home of WWF, as some people would say. They had about 19,000 people in attendance there, and our commentators, one of the best commentary teams in many minds ever, Gorilla Monsoon and Jesse the Body Ventura. And they had a lot of fun on this one. And it's fun listening to them. It's very nostalgic for a lot of people. So we go back to March 31st, 1985, and the number one song in the U.S. on this day, One More Night by Phil Collins.
I went to wave my arms.
But here's the interesting thing. WrestleMania had a theme song, and that was also by Phil Collins, a song called Easy Lover.
Why does this have an Unsolved Mysteries vibe to it?
Right.
It does. Oh, I love Unsolved Mysteries.
Robert Stack.
Such a good.
So this breaks with the tradition that we've seen on the past two Starcades of pay-per-views being on a major holiday. This is just when it worked, I guess. And like we said before on the past two Starcades, this was slightly before in-home pay-per-view. So this was actually broadcast on closed-circuit television to theaters. This event was seen live by over 1 million viewers, making it the largest pay-per-view viewing in history at that time, which is huge. And as you can guess, this is when the WWF was starting to rise and starting to build up and do that national expansion across the U.S. So this was kind of Vince McMahon's answer to Jim Crockett's Starcade, which we've covered the past 2 weeks. And this particular show was the last of 3 events that showcased WWF's partnership with MTV. MTV, of course, was pretty new at the time. The first event was the Brawl to End It All in 1984, followed by the War to Settle the Score about a month before WrestleMania. And that's how we got Cyndi Lauper involved with this show. She was a part of those previous 2. And she, of course, how she is not in the celebrity wing of the WWE Hall of Fame at this point is almost criminal. Maybe it's on her end. Maybe she doesn't want to, but it just seems
Who
weird.
wouldn't want to? I mean,
Yeah,
come on
right?
now. But yeah, she was the first. Like her and Mr. T are kind of the first celebrities to be. That's weird, huh?
Yeah, it really. And Mr. T went in several years back and gave the longest, most rambling induction speech ever, to the point where they sent out Kane to bring him off stage because he would not stop. It was really kind of a fun moment. The official company narrative is that Vince McMahon put every last dollar available towards this event, and that if the show failed, WWF would likely have to close its doors. Is that completely true? Probably not. It's probably enhanced a little bit, but this was a pretty big deal for Vince and for the company.
Definitely. I mean, it was WrestleMania, man.
Yeah. Who knew if there would be another one? And here we are. We just finished number 40 earlier this year. Pretty big deal.
Oh, we're old. We're old. All right, Justin, hit me with some
Wrestle Stats.
There they are. So on this show, out of the 22 people who had a match on the show, actually wrestled on WrestleMania 1, 11 of them are still alive. So we're at 50%.
50-50. Cool.
That's really good. 40 years ago, that's really good. And this is, however, the final time that we will cover a pay-per-view with any of the following wrestlers having a match on the show. Here they go. David Sammartino, The Executioner, S.D. Jones, and Wendy Richter.
Wendy Richter.
Wendy Richter. She's so great. I can't wait to get to that part.
I know.
Yeah. So let's talk about the opening of the show, the opening, the montage and everything. What'd you notice?
Oh my gosh, the opening graphics were fantastic, but it reminded me of Reading Rainbow or like some educational child TV show, because they would like fly across and then woo.
Yeah, there's like all those like stars in the background too and everything.
I loved it.
And that part is where that Phil Collins song originally played, was over all that. So the music we heard on Peacock was a dub over, as we've talked about before.
I was about to say, it didn't sound like Unsolved Mysteries to me.
Yeah.
But anyway, we go to the ring, and first off, the first thing I noticed is that silly drop down mic that came down into the ring. And like, this is really dumb and really embarrassing. But later on in the show, I legitimately had the thought for half a second of, oh, that's cool. They filmed with a drone. Because you can only see it hovering. You can't see any string or anything. And I just slapped myself. I was like, you're so stupid, Michelle. Like,
that's totally okay, because when I noticed it later in the show, I was like, why's the Money in the Bank briefcase up there? Oh, no, wait, no, that's not it.
It was a little distracting, wasn't it? Like,
it could be.
It was just about like
times.
6 feet above the ring sometimes, just hanging out there.
Yeah. And we get the national anthem. How about that?
I know. I was like, Mean Gene sings? And then he started. I was like, oh, no, he doesn't. He does not sing. He was kind of like William Shatner, kind of like speak singing. But you did say that Vince spent every last dollar. So maybe he had to use someone that was already under contract.
Did you notice too that he had a card there with the lyrics that he kept like kind of glancing at? But the great thing about it was, it was not in the middle of the show like it has been on the past two Starcades, and he went fast. Like, no dramatic flair to his voice, no long runs of all these notes. He got in and got out and got to the show. That was great. He should have like hired himself out to Jim Crockett Promotions to do the anthem every year.
I mean, he would have been better, but no, he didn't do any runs or anything because he was speak singing, Justin. I'm very curious to see if it becomes a thing, like Mean Gene sings it every year, or if next year they're going to be like, nope, we're getting Cyndi Lauper or somebody.
I think this is a one and done for old Mean Gene.
Darn, that sucks.
Yeah. But we have Lord Alfred Hayes up at the top of the aisle. They say backstage, but he's actually just at the top of the aisle, right where all the wrestlers are coming out. And this was quite interesting throughout the night.
Dude, okay, we'd seen him before. I guess I just don't remember him being like this, but he was killing me, man. The whole show, I was like, okay, keep your forehead still and your eyes fixed. Like, he needed some Botox, so he couldn't move his forehead because his eyebrows were going crazy. And then, like, you know those squeaky toys that you can put on your iPhone and like squeaky, squeaky, and your dog will look at the camera? That's what they needed for him because his eyes were just shifty all over the place. Like, what do you think? Was he nervous?
Yeah, you could tell that he was trying to remember everything he was supposed to say, and every movement of the eyes was and it was very noticeable, very distracting. Also distracting, he was wearing a tan tuxedo, not a black one, not a white one, not a gold one, not a red one, a tan tuxedo. It looked like it was like you skinned the booth at a 70s diner and just made a tuxedo out of it, you know?
Don't hate on the diner like that, man. Yeah, it was horrible. I think that was a thing in the 80s, though, was like the tan and the khaki. Ugh.
Yeah. So Alfred Hayes, he tosses to some pre-recorded interviews backstage, and Mean Gene is back there with Tito Santana, and they agree that neither one of them knows who the Executioner is or knows anything about him. And then Gene interviews the Executioner next, but there was like a little video transition in between the two interviews, mainly to cover up the fact that they were both done in one shot, and the good guy and the bad guy were actually in the same room together, just on either side of Gene. Creative enough, I guess, but the Executioner says, "You may know nothing about me, but you will." And then he tells Tito that he's coming after Tito's leg after that leg was injured by Greg Valentine a little while ago. And Tito and Greg Valentine had been in a feud over the Intercontinental Championship. So there you go.
So the Executioner says, like, you're going to know who I am, but this was his last pay-per-view. So,
yeah.
I mean, it did make me laugh, though. So when the Executioner came out to speak with Mean Gene, I guess I pictured, okay, do you remember when you do like a Royal Rumble or like a battle on the WCW NWO Revenge on N64?
Yeah.
So there was, you know, sometimes they threw in random wrestlers that didn't even exist, and there was the Executioner, and he actually looked menacing, and he had like
that black bag over his eyes. Yeah.
So I guess I was kind of expecting that, and then it just like this dude came out with this cheap red mask. He looked like Kevin Owens in a cheap red mask. Like that's all I saw, and I was just a little underwhelmed by that. That whole, I was just expecting something so much creepier, I guess, but no, it looked bad.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the match. Speaking of, he may have looked like Kevin Owens, but he was actually a guy by the name of Buddy Rose, who we lost probably about 15 years ago at the age of 56. His last match was in 2005 at an independent show in Tampa, and he was better known as Buddy Rose. He previously, this is interesting, won the NWA Pacific Northwest Tag Team Championship with Jesse Ventura, who's on commentary for this show. So there's some familiarity there. Not only was this his last and only WWF pay-per-view, this was his last WWF appearance, because right after this, he decided to return to the Pacific Northwest to keep wrestling up there. And then Tito Santana, we're going to get to him next week when we cover the Wrestling Classic, because he's on there a little bit more, and so it'll make a little bit more sense to talk about him then. If you noticed, the Executioner was announced as weight unknown from parts unknown. And then Tito, throughout his career, he was billed as being from Tocula, Mexico. But guess what? Tocula, Mexico is not a real city. It doesn't exist. Yeah, there is a city in Mexico called Toluca, but throughout his career, they said from Tocula, Mexico, and there is no such thing. In fact, Tito Santana isn't even from Mexico. He was born and raised in Mission, Texas.
Well, they didn't have Google back then, so it's not like anyone could just Google if that was a city or where it was.
Nobody's going to bring their entire Encyclopedia Britannica to Madison Square Garden.
Right. Yeah. Well, with this match right away, I just noticed the lighting and the camera quality look a lot more professional. Maybe it's because we've been watching like those NWA shows, but even with the Wrestling Classic next week, I mean, it looks more well lighted and just a higher quality of picture, don't you think?
Yeah, no, it does. They definitely it's almost like they were trying to again one up everything that had been done with Starrcade. So they wanted everything to look a little bit better. It was still very basic. I mean, it was still just a ring in the middle of an arena with no flashy entrance or anything like that. And as we'll see when we get to Starrcade 85, which happened later this year, they decided to step it up too. But we'll get to that at some point. As always, Jesse Ventura calls Tito Santana, Chico Santana, and he refers to Gorilla Monsoon as Gino Monsoon, kind of splitting his real name and his wrestler name. Another thing I noticed, just talking about looks, the ropes were so loose, like way looser than they are right now. They're just like at times like sagging, like Mae Young's puppies at Royal Rumble 2000. I think.
Yuck!
Can't wait till we review that one. That'll be fun.
I'm sure. Well, this ref, he is fancy. Like right off the bat, he's got his bow tie, which most of them wear bow ties during this. But did you notice, like throughout this match, he's very light and like skippy on his feet. It's like a ballerina, but a referee. Like I was just laughing, but I was enjoying so much like how he moved.
No, he was ready for anything. During the match, the Executioner, he gets drop kicked over the top rope and then lands directly in a chair at ringside. And then just gets back up and gets back in the ring. Speaking of ringside, did you see how many photographers were outside of the ring? I missed that. That made everything seem like such a big international ordeal.
It did. And you know, those photographers, they're still around. Like when you go to a live show, but I guess because lenses have improved so much, they can stay back. Because I know the AEW shows I've been to, they have like a very dedicated 2 or 3 photographers just taking pictures for them. But yeah, I guess you just had to be that close back then to get a good photograph.
Yeah. Well, the finish comes when Tito Santana locks in the figure 4 leg lock, which is Greg Valentine's finishing move. And they were, in a feud for the Intercontinental title. So it's kind of here's the figure 4, just a thumb of the nose at Greg Valentine.
Right. So, okay. So Tito Santana obviously won, but like, did the Executioner, did he actually tap out or did the ref just end it?
So neither one. The tap out thing came from the UFC.
Really?
In the late 90s. And so that was not a thing. And before that, it was just the wrestler telling the referee, okay, I give up. But then they saw the whole tap out thing and thought, oh, that's way more visual for the fans. Let's keep that. And so that's where that came from. Yeah.
Okay. Well, didn't know that. I mean, I guess it makes sense. And honestly, I didn't even know UFC existed in the 90s, but it's fine.
Much differently, but but Tito Santana wins a match in just under 5 minutes. They ring the bell a lot during this show.
Notice that. Yeah, it's a lot.
Like before they do the ring introductions, the bell rings. They introduce the first guy, the bell rings. They introduce the second guy, the bell rings. The match starts, the bell rings. The match ends, the bell rings. They announce the winner. The bell rings. It's like they just gave the bell hammer to like a 5-year-old who needed something to do. I don't know.
It was probably just Vince. No, we need more bells.
Ring the bell. We go back to Lord Alfred Hayes, who he's right there by the entrance, and we're going to see wrestlers walking right past him the entire night on their way to the ring and sometimes on the way back too. And Alfred's eyes are still darting all over the place as he tries to remember everything. He tosses to Mean Gene backstage with SD Jones. And SG Jones is ready. He is ready. He says today is the day for him, and we're going to get down today. And yeah, baby, let's do this. He leaves. King Kong Bundy walks in on the other side of Gene. So I guess they dumped that video transition in between the 2 interviews, and now we're okay with everybody knowing that these guys were in the same room at the same time. And Bundy just growls out some intimidating stuff, and we go to the ring for their match.
Yes, it was just a regular old singles match, King Kong Bundy versus SD Jones. But let's talk about them a little bit because we haven't seen them yet. King Kong Bundy, more like King Kong Baldy, am I right?
I'm like Diddy Kong Baldy.
I don't think you want to be like Diddy these days. He's in some trouble.
Different Diddy.
Oh, okay, good. Well, anyway, he was born November 7th, 1955, but unfortunately he did die about 5 years ago at the age of 63. His last match was an indie show in Springfield, Massachusetts in 2007. And before he joined WWF, he wrestled in World Class in Dallas. He had lost a hair match, and so he just kept the shaved head throughout his career, which I was kind of like, did he shave his eyebrows and the rest of his body hair too? Because this guy didn't have a hair on him. He was like a naked mole rat.
He was very aerodynamic.
He was. He could just fly through the. That's funny. Well, he'd later go into semi-retirement before rejoining the WWF for about like a year in the 90s. But his trademark move was making the referee count to 5 instead of 3 when he pins somebody. I'm not sure why you'd want to make it harder on yourself, but I guess it just contributes to his, I don't know.
Yeah, and you know what? Our friend Jeff, who used to wrestle a long time ago, he wrestled with King Kong Bundy back in the day.
No way.
Yeah, he knew him. That's pretty cool.
Well, I think Jeff took all of his body hair because Jeff is very mofo. SD Jones, the SD stands for Special Delivery. Whoa. He was born in 1945, Justin. I can't believe that. That is like so long ago. But
like the year that World War II ended, SD Jones was delivered.
That's insane. Special. He was delivered special. Whoa. He passed away at the age of 63 in 2008 when I graduated high school. And his last match was at an indie show in Deer Park, New York in 1995. At one time, he teamed with Rufus R. Jones, who we saw on Starrcade 83. And he originally joined the WWF in 1974. Not going to lie, Justin, every time I saw WWF a long time ago, I thought it was just a typo. I didn't realize that was like an extra company. Even though he was mainly used to, lose to bigger stars, he did get 2 wrestling figures made of him in the 80s. And so, Justin, I got to ask, you have a million wrestling figures from the 80s and 90s. Did you have him?
I didn't know. This was like, that was a line that was made before the Hasbro ones that I started collecting when I was a kid. So I missed out on these, but he got 2 of them made. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So let's get into the match. Justin, this was our first squash that we've seen.
And it was a squash.
Yeah. So was this King Kong Diddy Baldy? Was he in for just like a super big push, or like were they mad at SG Jones? Like, I'm just kind of curious the reasoning behind the squash.
Definitely nothing against SD Jones. Like you said, he had been around to lose a lot, and they were trying to push King Kong Bundy as this big monster heel like he had been in Dallas. And the best way to do it, I guess, is just to send him out there and have him kill a guy and then leave. Well,
King Kong Bundy did win in 25 seconds, but WWE has always claimed that it was just 8 seconds. Is this a rodeo? What's going on? Like, do you know why they try to claim that?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess just to keep the allure of King Kong Bundy and just the crazy things that can happen at WrestleMania. You never know. That record would be broken for the shortest WrestleMania match, but not for another like 30 years or so. We'll get to that one eventually. But that record stood for a long time.
Interesting. Cool. Well,
yeah. Did you notice? It's just one of those things that I just noticed. But whenever they were introducing King Kong Bundy, he looked up, and when he looks up, his head and everything is so massive that it looks like his head and his face are just like melting down onto his chest. It's like all one big thing. Like he's like this very angry bag of butter.
Yes.
With eyes.
I was thinking he looked like one of those things in like Mario, one of the little Goombas or whatever that you jump on. He kind of looked like that because it's like his face all on a body. Like his head doesn't exist. It's just a body with a face. Yeah. Well, like I said, that was our first squash. Ended in 25 seconds. Mean Gene is backstage with Matt Bourne. And he says that Ricky Steamboat's main problem is that he's too nice and he's going to take advantage of it. Don't do that to my boy, Ricky. I love him. Now, Ricky enters from the other side and he says he's been working on his meanness. He tries to continue talking, but we must be on a tight schedule because Gene is like, nope, cuts him off, and we go back to the ring. So next we've got that next singles match, and it's Matt Bourne versus Mr. Ricky Steamboat. So Matt Bourne, he was born in 1957, but died in 2013 at the age of 55. His last match was at, again, an indie show in New Bedford, Mass. in 2013. Justin, I was so excited to learn this. He is best known because he was the original Doink the Clown. Hell yeah. Yeah. Doink was my favorite as a kid. I think I like Dink a little bit more because he was a little less scary. But Dink, remember him?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So Matt Bourne, aka First Doink, spent time in WCW in the early 90s as Big Josh, which was like a trucker gimmick. And then after leaving the WWF and the Doink character, Doink was recast and Bourne went to ECW and kind of did this weird I'm half Doink thing. Yeah, I don't know. Feel like he should have just stuck with WWF and the Doink. And then Ricky Steamboat, we last saw him on NWA Starrcade 1984, just 4 months before this. So it's pretty crazy that this was only 4 months. Like there was only a 4-month gap because
that's
like,
how fast everybody was signing up with Vince. I mean, it really went quick. Right.
And what I want to know is how did he get so massive in those 4 months? Because, in the Starrcades, he was much more of a slim and trim muscular guy, but now he's just freaking massive and bulky.
And I thought it was just me. And I'm looking at it, and then I went back and looked at some pictures from Starrcade. I was like, no, like in those 4 or 5 months, there were certain supplements that were in the vicinity of WWF in the 80s that Vince might have pushed on people because he liked them to be bigger. I'm not making accusations here. I'm just,
Hey, Justin, have you seen that episode of Dark Side of the Ring about the steroid trials? What?
I haven't. Why did you bring that up? That's weird.
I don't know. It just popped into my head, but I don't know what's going on in this match, but it drives me nuts how everyone in this pay-per-view says Oregon instead of Oregon. I was like, because one person said it and I was like, oh, that was weird. And then someone else said it. I was like, did people just talk different?
Yeah, I've always known as just Oregon, but I wonder how people there say it because like people in Las Vegas and other cities in that state say Nevada and get very, very angry when you say Nevada. So I wonder how they say it in Oregon.
Yeah, it was the same in Colorado. Everyone thought I was weird for saying Colorado. It's Colorado. Ew, right. Don't like it. Well, I know I talk a lot about wrestlers and refs and their looks, but I got to comment on this one, Justin. Matt Bourne has Jeff Daniels' blonde, shaggy hair from Dumb and Dumber, but then he's got Drew McIntyre's like pitch black beard. His carpet does not match the drapes or whatever that saying is.
I wonder if his carpet matched the drapes when he was Doink. That neon green hair and, just saying.
No, I mean, it should have. I mean, it's commitment to a character, Justin.
Come on.
I know. Well,
he needed a Merkin.
Ew, I hate Merkins. Just the thought of it. Like, why the hell does that even exist? Like, as if, never mind. I'm not getting into that. I'm not even going to get into that. Well, there was a spot in this match where Ricky just kept chopping Matt. And one of them, I guess, was just extra hard. And I guess this Matt guy was trying to sell and show what he could do. Because, I mean, Ricky chops him and he swings around and falls flat on his face. Like, I gasped when I saw it. Like, it hurt my nose, man.
If he would have done that when he was Doink, we should have gotten the little squeaky toy sound effect when he went down.
Yes. Would be like, pink.
Yeah. But it's also nice whenever they're doing chops, like problems of being a modern fan is you didn't hear everybody going, woo, on every chop. Like that gets very old.
I like the woos. What are you talking about? It's
fun. Difference of opinion.
I think it's fun. Matt Bourne, did you notice he wears his knee pads on his shins? I know we've talked about this, like just you and me, like talking about wrestlers doing this in the past. I wonder why that is.
Yeah, I don't know why he did it, but people had different reasons. I don't know why Matt Bourne did, but he certainly did. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Did you see that during the match, Matt Bourne, he grabbed the front of Ricky's trunks and kind of pulled on him. And I was like, oh, we about to see Dickie Steamboat right now. Well, it was close.
That's the
thing, we were supposed to see the little dragon.
I mean, maybe that's what you're talking about. Like Vince had to step it up because they were showing butts on Starrcade. So they're like, nope, we got to show the front. We got to do some
show them your balls.
Well, Justin, Ricky Steamboat did win that in just 4.5 minutes. And you know what? It was a top rope win. Didn't move off the top rope. He won. And, starting on this pay-per-view, like I appreciate so much that they had instant replay of the finishes. So I didn't have to say, hang on, what happened? And hit the back 10 seconds button.
Yeah, no, it definitely helps out. We did during this match, though, we got a Gorilla-ism. Now, for those unaware, Gorilla Monsoon, who was on commentary, he had certain phrases that he became famous for, right? There's a whole list of them out there. I couldn't even begin to start them. I'm trying to think of some right now, but the one that he referred to in this one is the wrestler's external occipital protuberance. Yeah,
I have that.
We all do. It is on the back of your head, right where your skull kind of meets your spine. That little soft area there is the external occipital protuberance.
No, but I have a good one because the girl that cuts my hair says that my haircut works perfectly with how my occipital is shaped. She doesn't use protuberance because I don't like that word, but
you should use it on her next time. Just be like, just make sure that you do the thing on my external occipital protuberance and see what she does.
Crystal will be like, what, Michelle? What? Yeah. So after Ricky Steamboat won, we go back to, oh gosh, Lord Alfred Hayes, who's holding the official souvenir WrestleMania program. What? Which I was like, is this what he's using to go off of? I guess he got tired of trying to memorize everything. And I can just imagine him like borrowing that from a nearby fan, or the conversation when he went to go buy one for himself. He's like, $20.
Could I please borrow this just for a moment? I promise I'll give it back.
But he's all shifty-eyed while he's doing it.
Yeah.
Mean Gene is backstage with David Sammartino and Bruno Sammartino. David says he's ready for this, and Bruno threatens Johnny Valiant. Then Gene interviews Brutus Beefcake and Johnny Valiant, and Johnny is cutting this fired-up interview when Gene asks for Brutus for comment, and he just blows a raspberry into his mic.
What was that?
I don't know.
Like,
I know. I mean, honestly, it's something I would probably do as a wrestler. But anyway, well, take us into the match with Brutus Beefcake and David Sammartino, Justin.
Yes. Brutus Beefcake. Both of these guys still with us today. He was born all the way back in 1957, making him 67 years old now. His last match was in 2015 in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Now, in the early days of Brutus Beefcake's career, he teamed with Hulk Hogan, and they were the Boulder brothers, Ed Boulder and Terry Boulder. And then he was most notorious a few years after this when he became Brutus the Barber Beefcake, and he would come out with the big garden shears and he would cut people's hair after the matches. And he had the barbershop interview segment where the Rockers broke up. That's what he was most known for. But then you go over to WCW, which he had a couple runs in. He had, I swear, it must be 10, 15, 20 different names in WCW. I mean, he was the Booty Man. He was the Zodiac. He was the Man with no face, the Man with no name, the Disciple, on and on and on and on. So on the other side of the ring, we have David Sammartino. He's 63 years old today. And of course, he's the son of the legendary Bruno Sammartino, who held the WWF World Championship for about 6 years total. Actually, I think it was more than that. Huge run. Basically, if it was the 70s, Bruno was the champion for the most part. In the beginning of David's WWF career, he actually teamed with Bruno, even though Bruno was kind of against David getting into the wrestling business. But Bruno was there to help give him some credibility and everything. After he left WWF, relatively sparse career, couple matches in WCW, and then he became a personal trainer. So that's who these guys are. And David's out there with Bruno for this match, and Brutus Beefcake is out there with Johnny Valiant.
Right. So does Johnny Valiant have any connection to Jimmy Valiant at all?
Yes. So the Valiant brothers were Jimmy, Johnny, and Jerry. They were not real life brothers. They were not related for real at all. But yeah, they were all in storyline related to each other. Brutus is already in the ring when we go to the ring, and then David and Bruno get an entrance together. The crowd goes nuts.
Oh, absolutely. And then later, like further into the match, when Bruno Sammartino like steps in the ring, the crowd went crazy. And I was thinking that's like when Sting came back for us, or like if Stone Cold or The Rock, like I'm thinking that was their level, because Bruno was a big deal.
If you think about it, not only was he a big deal, he was a big deal there, like in that building, because it was still when that was a territory. And so Bruno in the Garden, Bruno in Philadelphia, even Washington, D.C. a little bit, Bruno was the guy. And so that was just like the biggest rock star of rock stars coming back right there in your face.
Yeah, well, obviously I got to talk about their clothes, because I always notice. Brutus had some purple and black striped pants on. I think he was trying to be like Damian Priest. Like he wanted to join the Judgment Day, because those are Damian's colors. Like what did the internet, the IWC, they call Damian the bisexual Undertaker or something. So I think he wanted to be the bisexual Beefcake, which is honestly a great name.
Any gimmick that Brutus Beefcake ever had, he always looked like a Chippendale, you know.
Yeah.
He always had like some mesh on his tights and that sort of thing.
I mean, he was pretty. I mean, he could pull it off.
Hey, why not? Why not? If you got it. Jesse says that whoever loses this match, their career is going to be set back months, maybe even years.
Really? Why?
Why? Like, there's
what
no
does
stakes
Jesse
to
know?
Like, maybe just because it was the biggest show ever. Maybe, I don't know. I that's weird.
That's weird. Well, I know at one point David Sammartino in this match is twisting Brutus's ankle around, and it looks very convincing, very painful. He must be very flexible, because I know my ankle wouldn't turn like that without.
Well, you have to be very flexible to be a Chippendale. I mean, you gotta move. But you know, that's the thing. David Sammartino, he definitely had the technical fundamentals down, which of course he no doubt perfected with his dad. But he was just kind of a void of charisma, and he didn't really have that part. And it almost makes me wonder if his dad's dislike for the flashiness of the new WWF kind of made David feel like he had to tone it down some so as not to disappoint his dad even further. Did you notice that they could get behind what he was doing, but he didn't seem to connect.
See, and I didn't know if that's just because I didn't know him beforehand, like going into this pay-per-view. But yeah, I just felt like he just didn't have a lot of oomph. But like Brutus Beefcake, you know, he came out and he had the charisma, and David was just kind of like there to do his wrestling and then leave. Yeah, I don't know. I agree with you. Yeah.
But and you kind of lent to my next point, is that this match, it had no business being this long. I mean, it went almost 12 minutes. And it was to the point where I was starting to notice things, just random things. Like I noticed the exit sign in the background, which for years, if you watched an episode of Raw or a pay-per-view that would happen in Madison Square Garden, that's where they would put the entranceway with all the LEDs or whatever, and it would cover up that exit sign and wherever it went. So I ended up going down a mental rabbit hole about that as this match was going on.
Like, it's so funny you mentioned that, because I think it was during this match that I noticed a sponsor sign, and I think it was Texaco, like the old gas station. And then I started thinking, oh, like this is weird. We don't have like sponsors on the ring apron or on the ring or anything like that. So obviously this match was too long, because you and I were noticing the signs in the background.
Yeah. Speaking of, do you remember, like you said, Texaco? Do you remember when instead of paying for gas at the pump with like your debit card or whatever, you could have like an Exxon card or a Texaco card or a Chevron credit card?
I had one.
That seems just wild now.
Oh yeah, I had one like in high school. I had like a gas card, and it was weird because I had a debit card in high school as well. But I wonder if those still even exist.
I don't know. Like I wouldn't see the need for them anymore, but I don't know.
I thought you were going to say when you had to go in and hand the cashier money, but like, oh man, like if the pump says like, hey, this isn't working, see cashier, I'm like, I'll go to a different gas station. I'm not going in.
Yeah. Or like when there was still full service stations.
Yeah.
Like everywhere. I mean, isn't there like one or two states that require you to use full service?
I think I think Oregon is one. Oregon and Washington. Yes.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, anyway, back to the match. Eventually, Bruno and Johnny Valiant, they get into it on the outside, which spills into the ring, and then the ensuing melee just causes the referee to call for the bell. This just turned into chaos.
Yeah, it was just it was a good chaos though. It didn't look like a cluster, but both managers got involved. And I mean, you rarely see a double disqualification these days. So I liked it.
Yeah, no, I mean, if it makes sense, then sure, why not? I think people more than anything were just happy to see Bruno getting some physicality and once again, But we head back to Alfred Hayes. He says we're about to get our first title match of the night. Tosses it to Gene, who's backstage, and he's with Intercontinental Champion Greg Valentine, who, with that feathered haircut and those big sunglasses, he continues to look like your butch aunt from out of town. The one who likes to ride dune buggies a little bit too much. And anyway, it's time for Junkyard Dog to be interviewed. He says he needs a bone to chew on, and he'll be able to afford a lot of bones after tonight. So, is he actually a dog? Like, is he actually what? How did we get here?
He did a move in the ring at one point where he like crawls at someone and he looked like a dog. And so, I think he's turned into a dog.
Eventually we're going to get a snake and a bulldog and a rooster. So, why not?
Fine.
But let's go to the first championship match of the night.
Let's do it. We've got Greg Valentine, the champion, versus the Junkyard Dog for the WWF Intercontinental Championship. Now, we saw Greg Valentine on Starrcade of 83, and then we're going to see the Junkyard Dog on next week's episode. So we'll talk a little bit more about him then. It makes a little more sense to wait. But yeah, we get the match started. I obviously noticed that Jimmy Hart's suit because I noticed the clothes once again. What the hell was he wearing, Justin? It looked like it was made with like glitter glue at Vacation Bible School at the First Baptist Church. It had music notes and like glittery music notes and like colors. Like it looked like his 5-year-old made that suit. What was that, Jimmy? What was that, Jimmy Hart?
All I noticed is he didn't have his megaphone, and I was very sad. I
was sad too, because I talked about in Starrcade how annoyed I was, but once he didn't have it, I was so sad.
Yeah.
And then Junkyard Dog's pants just said thump. What?
Yeah, that was his finishing move, was the thump. But it also could have been an invitation for the ladies out there. Just thump his butt.
Could have been a weird fart noise. We don't know.
That too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we talked about Ricky. I almost said Ricky Starks. Ricky Steamboat looking bigger earlier. Junkyard Dog looks bigger here too than he did on Starrcade. Did you notice that?
I did notice it. It wasn't quite as a dramatic difference as Ricky, but he did look bigger. And it
looked like it wasn't muscle bulk though. It looked like maybe it was just like fat a little bit. Not that he was fat. It just he didn't look like more built. You know what I mean?
Maybe he met a lady and was happy, because you get fat when you meet someone and you're happy. So,
And she thumped him.
Doink. Ow, that might hurt. Oh gosh. Well, in this match, I just gotta say, I hate to be negative, but I've seen much better headbutts in my days. The headbutt session was a little rough, and I realized it's because neither of them like had long hair, like super long, because you can usually use your hair to kind of, help
Cover
with
it
the
up.
illusion. Yeah. But Junkyard Dog was just like bank about two inches away, but it was fine. They sold it. It was fine. But more than anything, Justin, at this point in the show, this is where I started noticing, and it drove me nuts the rest of the show. Please tell me if you noticed it. Friggin' Gorilla Monsoon saying, "Holy mackerel." Oh my God. I think
that was another gorillaism, like throughout the night. Holy mackerel.
I ended up counting. I got 9 times, but that was the part where I started noticing. So it could have been more. I might have missed some, but holy mackerel.
We got another gorillaism during this match that we got a lot on the show. He said this one a lot too, saying this is a happening. Did you hear that one a lot?
I didn't even notice it, but honestly, I was thinking he's going to start saying like, "Oh my Lanta," like DJ Tanner from Full House with the holy mackerel. And it was kind of charming, it was kind of charming, but this is a happening. So is he saying like, this is a noun, a happening, or this is a happening?
Yes, I think like a noun, because later on he says, this is a happening and it is happening.
Ah, okay. So there you go.
So he cleared it up. Did you, I don't know, maybe I just blinked too long or something. I got a little bit confused on this match because Valentine, he pins Junkyard Dog with his feet on the ropes for the leverage or whatever, right? And he jumps out of the ring. Well, earlier, Jimmy Hart had been knocked off the ring apron and hit his head on the floor. And so I thought he was still down. So when Valentine got out of the ring and then Jimmy Hart pops up next to him, I thought a fan had jumped the rail. And I was like, I don't remember this about WrestleMania. And then, of course, it's just Jimmy Hart. He needed his megaphone. I would have known.
Well, I knew for sure it was him because of his gaudy outfit. So,
but then the ref, he restarts the match because Tito Santana runs in there and tells him what happened. That was weird too.
That was weird. So I was going to ask you, like, why did he listen to Tito and reverse the call? Like, Tito's not Vince or anybody. I mean, that's just something we don't see now.
Yeah.
I was like, why?
And it would almost be like, because what we would see later on is if that did happen, then the referee would like ask the crowd, like, did that happen? Did that happen? And all right, we're restarting the match, but this was just like, oh, well, Tito's got an honest face. Let's just
exactly.
Let's keep it going.
So why didn't Greg get back in? Was he just that confident that his win was legit?
It kind of seemed like he kind of wanted to, and that Jimmy Hart was holding him back. And but that could be one of the things too, where Greg's kind of like, oh, I really want to get back in there. I mean, don't hold me back. Hold me back.
Well, the ref gave it away that he wasn't going to get back in because that ref, he was done. He wanted to be done because he was counting. He was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Like he was not slowing that countdown at all. But anyway, Junkyard Dog did win by count out in 6 minutes and 55 seconds.
Yeah, unfortunately, he didn't win the championship, but he won the match and he seemed happy enough with that.
Definitely. So we go back to Alfred, who, sneaks a look at his program before we go to him. And then he just tosses it right to Gene. God, those shifty eyes, they killed me, man. Mean Gene is with Freddie Blassie, who I developed a great love for him during this. Nikolai Volkov and the Iron Sheik, who calls him Gene Mean. A little bit backwards.
yes, Gene Mean. Yes.
I kind of like it.
Good.
Let's keep it. When speaking to Nikolai, Gene says, and what about you, commie? I mean, comrade.
That was a little rough. I was like,
I know. I was like,
called him a commie? Sure,
I know. But they bring back to the video transition between interviews to bring in the U.S. Express with Captain Lou Albano. After some classic Albano babble, Barry Windham says, we're on our way to the ring now, but this is pre-recorded and they're still in their street clothes. Like, did you notice that? Because I was like, how did they change so fast?
So I was like, oh boy, nobody's smarting Barry up to the fact that he wasn't wearing his wrestling clothes yet.
I know. Anyway, but, I mean, at least he's a little more aware of what's going on than Alfred, so it's fine. That's
true. That's true.
Take us to the tag team match, Justin.
Yeah. It's a WWF World Tag Team Championship match between the U.S. Express, who were the champions at the time, and the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov. Let's talk about these guys. Barry Windham, July 4th, 1960 is when he was born. He's still alive today at the age of 64. And he just had his last match in 2010 in St. Petersburg, Florida. And Michelle,
what?
We got a somewhat connection here, very loose connection here, because Barry Windham was born in the town of Sweetwater, Texas.
Sweetwater, that's like an hour from us. It's between here and Abilene. Maybe like an hour and a half.
More like maybe like hour and a half or 2 hours, something like that. But that's also where WWE Hall of Famer John Bradshaw Layfield, JBL, was born. Our friend Scott went to high school with him and actually showed me his yearbook, where you can see a young little high school JBL in there looking like the smarmy prick that he was on TV.
Scott, as in Dad's old neighbor, Scott?
No, Scott is in ACOC.
Oh,
Scott.
No way.
Yes,
that's cool.
He brought me the yearbook to look at. It was unbelievable. Yeah.
That is crazy. I didn't even know Scott was from Sweetwater.
Yeah.
Cool.
So Barry Windham, he's from Sweetwater. He spent most of his career really in NWA and WCW, and he later briefly worked as a producer in the WWE. He also had this crappy gimmick in the WWE in the mid-90s called the Stalker, where he was a hunter. He wore like camouflage, and it was really, really dumb. But his father was Blackjack Mulligan, who also spent a long time as a producer for WWE. His brother was Kendall Windham, who was a wrestler as well. He's the brother-in-law of Mike Rotundo, who's his tag team partner in this match, and he's the uncle of Bray Wyatt and Bo Dallas. How about
Didn't
that?
know they were related. Did
Yeah,
not
so
know.
just a whole wrestling family there. And like I said, Mike Rotundo, he's still around too today at the age of 66. His last match that he had was on an episode of WWE Raw in 2007 when they had, I think it was the 15th anniversary show or one of those big shows. And so they had a bunch of the old wrestlers come back for a battle royal, and he returned as IRS. If people remember IRS from the 90s, Erwin R. Shyster. That's where he gained a lot of fame for a lot of people who were watching back then. He had significant runs in NWA and WCW as well. And he actually worked for years after he got out of the ring as a producer in WWE before he was laid off because of the pandemic. But along with Barry Windham here, just earlier this year, they were inducted as the U.S. Express into the WWE Hall of Fame. So good for them.
Yeah.
And of course, he is the father of Bray Wyatt and Bo Dallas. So big wrestling connections in this match.
Yeah.
Iron Sheik, Nikolai Volkov, we're going to see them again next week on the Wrestling Classics. So let's hold off on talking about them because we do have something extra at the end of this show to get to. So I'm trying to save some time here. So let's get into this match. What did you think?
Hold up. Before we get into the match, am I crazy? Yeah. Why did I think it was Mike Rotunda, not Rotundo?
So it was said both ways over the years.
Okay.
Like it almost depended on the match if he was going to be Rotunda or Rotundo. So no real explanation about it.
Okay. And then also before we get into the match, what the hell was on the manager's face?
Oh, it was Captain Lou Albano?
Yeah, like what was on his face? Because it was just like so distracting.
So he would do this. He would put a safety pin through his cheek and then hang rubber bands from it.
Why?
I don't know, because he was a wild man. He was a crazy man. And yeah, he would do that.
I literally thought this was like a medical device and it was like a drain from a cyst on his face or something. Like I did not know what the hell that was. I was trying to figure it out. And then he came back later and we're like, there's the dude with the face again.
Yeah. I remember when I was a kid, I was so excited the first time that I saw him because he played Super Mario on the Super Mario Brothers Saturday Super Show or something like that.
Did we have VHS of that?
Yes, we did.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. I don't even know if I ever watched it, but I remember seeing the cover.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Well, that paint on his face was terrible.
It's like he and this guy would play Luigi, and then they would toss to like a cartoon clip of Mario and Luigi like doing a cartoon, and then it would come back to them. Yeah. It was pretty wild. After the ring introductions here, Nikolai Volkov, as he does, sings the Soviet national anthem, which people just loved, right?
I love when people throw crap in the ring. It would probably annoy me like now that I'm old, but back then I would have thought that was really, really funny.
Well, not only were they throwing crap in the ring, I don't know how hard you watch, but they're showing the crowd while Nikolai is singing the Soviet national anthem. One guy is like flipping off the camera and just screaming, F you at him. And then just before the camera cuts off of him and back to the ring, a different guy does a very exaggerated hand motion of pleasuring himself.
That existed in 85? Really? I mean, I didn't think people like did that. Like
that's exactly what he did. That's exactly what he did. But then Iron Sheik takes the mic and he says, Russia, #1, Iran, #1. And then Michelle, what did he do?
Hot Tuah on America. Like he literally said it. Like it wasn't just like a Tuah. He said hot Tuah on America. So I don't know if this girl, if she's getting rich, the Iron Sheik did it first.
That's right. That's right. So the U.S. Express gets their entrance starting in the backstage hallway, which we're going to see much more often now on WWE shows. You notice they'll start backstage and follow them all the way out through the curtain, which is a great shot.
It's a great shot, but they're overusing it. In my opinion,
a little, they're getting a little cute with it, but that's okay because it's better than the same thing that we saw for years and years and years before that.
Right. Right.
So they enter now. If you'll notice, I said earlier Barry Windham, right, and Rotunda. Do you notice something about those two names?
So Windham Rotunda is Bray Wyatt's real name. So I'm guessing he was named after Barry Windham.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so I thought Mike Rotundo, duh, and Barry Windham were just like friends, and that's why he named. But so he's actually named after his uncle.
Yeah. I mean, that's how it works. So it's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try not to get too confusing on this, but during this time, the U.S. Express, their theme song, their entrance theme was Real American, okay? And that would, of course, become famous for being Hulk Hogan's theme that we all know, I am a real American, right? So it was dubbed over here with some generic production music, but then later in the show, during Hulk Hogan's match, he comes out, we see it on Peacock as him coming out to Real American, but that was dubbed over his real music at the time, which was Eye of the Tiger. Is that confusing?
No, because I
think you're lying to me, but okay.
No. I was just trying to think about what their logic and rationale was. Maybe they wanted to only use it once, so they saved it for the very end. I don't know, but
I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. Did you notice, since you are all about the clothes, the Iron Sheik's shorts here? They were very confusing because they looked like black jean shorts that had been airbrushed like a 90s rapper. Did you see that?
Yeah, he had some jorts on with some graffiti on them.
Yeah, and it said Iran really big on the leg. It was very, but then he still had the boots that had the little curly thing on the toe.
Ew,
so
I don't like those boots. It makes me feel like they're gonna kick him in the butt or something. I don't know. I don't know why. Those boots look silly to me. It's like the cowboy boots, the crocodile skin boots we see around here in West Texas. Obviously it started from the beginning, but especially in this match, it was the moment where I was like, okay, this wrestling's like next level compared to the Starrcades we had watched before. It's just much faster and much more exciting. The crowd is much more excited. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and the funny thing is, I think we've talked about this before. If we haven't, we will. That the Southern wrestling was seen as more real, right? Mm-hmm. But that also meant that they would lay there in a hold for a long time because that did seem more real. Whereas this was supposed to be the flashy, the exciting, the show business of wrestling, which, a lot of people would agree with you, I think. And another thing that I noticed during this match that I never even thought about before, I saw a puff of cigarette smoke come up from the crowd, like in front of the ring. And it was barely there. And then that sent me down a rabbit hole trying to figure out when Madison Square Garden went no smoking. And I couldn't find a definite answer. But what a weird thing to think about in 2024, that people just sitting around smoking inside.
Ew.
Was just a thing.
I know, that's so weird. And of course, people now, if you go to an event, try to sneak a vape inside, but they usually just like blow it in their shirt. But what's funny is I remember seeing that puff of smoke and thinking like, am I really seeing that? Am I getting a migraine? Like, what is that? Because also, I don't know if you noticed this on the whole pay-per-view, like 2 or 3 of the cameras they were using had like pink dots on the lens. Did you notice that at all? Yeah. So I didn't know if I was really seeing the smoke, but golly, can you imagine like sitting in an event and someone lighting up next to you? Because I hate cigarette smoke. I won't even sit at a slot machine if someone starts smoking next to me. I move.
and it's so weird because unless you are at a place like Vegas where you can like smoke at the casinos, it seems like so many fewer people smoke cigarettes these days than it used to be like when we were kids. Like, it's almost weird to see somebody smoking a cigarette now. Is that just me?
Have you ever noticed that, like, especially like in Vegas, because that's really the only time I see people smoke? Well, wow, I'm getting really ahead of myself. So now you have to be 21 to buy cigarettes. For a long time, yeah, you have to be 21. And I've always said it should be 21 because I think a lot of people started when they were 18 because they couldn't drink, but they could smoke. And so if you notice, like in Vegas and stuff, the people who are smoking cigarettes are older. You don't really see like the 20 somethings smoking, but you do see them vaping. So I guess, but I mean, vaping at least smells a little better. It smells like, it smells like an apple pie, not tar and grossness. So anyway, enough about smoking. I do think that's wild that people just sat there and smoked in public during a wrestling show.
Yeah. Well, so they had this whole US versus foreign thing in this match. And how did you feel it went over?
I thought, wow, like I just so expected America to win. You know, it was like Iran and Russia versus America. America's going to win. It's the biggest event of the year. No, it was a great heel win, and I loved it.
and while the crowd like certainly didn't like the foreigners, I feel like the people in the South hated them even more. They seem to get just a little bit more hatred from the crowd when we watch those NWA shows. They seem to just like truly despise the Russian wrestlers. Whereas the people here in New York are kind of like, yeah, shut up. I got my own problems. Just leave me alone, you know? Definitely.
It's almost like in the South, they think that they really are from Russia and that they really are bad guys.
Yeah.
Not a character.
Yeah. So the ending of the match comes when Iron Sheik gets Freddie Blassie's cane, whacks Wyndham over the head with it. Nikolai gets the pin, and we got new champions in just under 7 minutes. Fun match.
Very fun. It's kind of weird switching the titles that it was only in 7 minutes, but it's fine. I like it.
Yeah, totally fine. Gene's backstage as the bad guys and new champions return from the ring. And once again, Iron Sheik refers to him as Gene Mean. And then Gene turns his attention to classy Freddie Blassie.
Oh, and the theater kid in me was screaming at Fred Blassie because his back was to the camera, and you can tell that like Mean Gene's trying to like move the mic to force him to turn around. But oh man, the theater kid was like, "Don't ever put your back to your audience.
You're upstaging yourself."
Exactly.
Gene asks Blassie, "Hey, what happened to your cane?" And Blassie's like, "What cane? I didn't even have a cane." It's so great. Like Blassie, if you put him on your Mount Rushmore of wrestling managers, I don't think anybody can argue with. He's just so good.
He became one of my favorites in this one.
What's that?
In this one pay-per-view, he became one of my favorites.
Go back to Alfred Hayes to introduce the next match. And I think I figured it out. He's not using that souvenir program to figure out what the next match is. He's using it to get autographs from the wrestlers as they pass by. He's like, "Would you mind? I have a pen here. I have a Sharpie." Yeah. So we go back to Gene. He's backstage with Bobby Heenan and Big John Studd. They have a duffel bag full of cash, $25,000 that Big John Studd is putting on the line in this next match.
I got a lot to say about this. I got a lot to say.
Go on.
Well, first of all, number one, those look like $1 bills. And I'm like, there's no way you have 25,000 $1 bills in there. But it's all like crunched. Each bill is crunched up and like crumpled into that duffel bag. And ooh, it gave me PTSD from when I worked at Starbucks and we got boob money. And let me tell you about boob money. It was nasty.
Boob money.
Yes. So I worked at Starbucks throughout high school, college, you know, and these women would come in and, you know, I live in Texas, so it's pretty freaking hot. And they would pull cash out of their bra, their boob, and they'd put it on the counter and it was all like damp. And it was disgusting. And like we got to the point, like we had certain baristas who wouldn't accept boob money. They're like, "I'm not touching it. That's gross." And it is nasty. And just seeing all those crumpled up ones reminded me of when they throw the crumpled up damp money just on the counter out of their boob. Oh, nasty.
It's funny that this gave you a bad memory because it gave me a bad memory as well.
Really?
Okay. So gather round, kids. But back in the early 90s, there was a thing called the WWF Fan Club, okay? And they would advertise it in WWF Magazine and on TV, and you would get some stuff out of it. You know, I remember I got a little Undertaker door hanger, a Do Not Disturb door hanger, and they would give you a cassette with like 6 or 7 wrestler theme songs on there. Pretty cool. But I remember seeing the advertisement for it, and there was a picture of a WWF duffel bag. And I was like, "Oh man, I could like pack stuff in that and take it with me places. It's going to be really cool." And I get the shipment in from the WWF Fan Club, and there was a WWF duffel bag. It was a keychain.
I remember that.
They photographed it cleverly enough to where it looked like a full-size duffel bag, but it was a little duffel bag about 3 or 4 inches long on a keychain.
Okay, so I remember you having that keychain, and we kept it in the little drawer with all the other little toys. I never realized the story behind it, that you thought you were getting a big duffel bag out of that.
Yeah.
Man, and Also, that's dumb because none of you kids could drive. Why do you need a keychain?
Yeah, like I have no idea, but that was the first time that WWF ever disappointed me. Wouldn't be the last.
Man, what a scam. I blame Vince. So it's so weird to me that there used to be cash prizes on these matches. So like when did that trend kind of fade out?
I'm not sure. And I want to say that we saw it again within the past several years. I want to say it was maybe an AEW match, but I could be wrong. But, one thing that Gorilla Monsoon would say a lot, and also Jim Ross, they would mention the winner's share of the purse. So it kind of kept the idea alive that there was money set aside on this match and the winner would take the majority of it. That's the closest I think we've gotten for the most part in a while.
I'm guessing it has to do with like trying to make it more real, kind of like boxing.
Right.
When you said the purse, that made me think boxing. So
right, yeah, and that is largely where most people would know it from. But we got an interesting match here with some interesting stipulations.
Yeah, so it was a career versus $15,000 body slam challenge match between Andre the Giant and Big John Studd. So basically, you don't have to pin anybody. You just have to body slam someone. Easy enough. So a little bit about Andre the Giant. I think a lot of people, I'm going to get more into him because he's obviously very famous. He was born on May 19th in 1946, right around World War II again. And he died at the age of 46 on January 28th, 1993. He debuted in 1966, and he had his last match at an All Japan TV taping in Tokyo in 1992. By the time he was 12 years old, he stood at 6'3". Wow. He'd eventually reach a height of somewhere around 7 feet tall, but WWF always billed him as being 7'4", which I don't think anyone would question it. I didn't.
Yeah, no, I mean, if he says he's 7'4", I'm going to believe him. He's big.
Exactly. And his teeth look very small compared to the rest of his face. Did you notice that? Anyway, I was like, how does he eat with those things? Prior to signing full-time with WWF, he was used as like a touring special attraction. He would like travel to various territories and he was booked by Vince McMahon Sr.
Right.
So interesting. Movie fans best know him as his role as Fezzik in The Princess Bride.
Yeah.
Is it Fezzik or Physique?
Fezzik, I believe, yeah.
Because I feel like it should be Physique, but I've never seen The Princess Bride, Justin.
I only saw it once, and I was like in my early 30s when I finally watched it, so don't feel bad.
Yeah, I knew he was in it, but I'm just not a real princessy, bridey kind of girl, I guess. Big John Studd, first of all, he looks like an 80s version of Brock Lesnar. Even in the face, it was very, So Big John Studd, he died at the age of 47 in 1995, and he had his last match just 5 years prior at an indie show in South Carolina. His build height was 6'10", so still pretty big, but not 7'4". Earlier in his WWF career, he'd come to the ring with a stretcher and would beat his opponent down so much that they had to be wheeled out on the stretcher. That's
pretty fun. I kind of wish somebody would do that now. That's pretty good.
It's kind of like when Darby or Sting would bring the coffin to the ring and they had to put him in and shut the thing. And I remember that match was all controversial because he put Swerve in the coffin, but his dreadlock was hanging out. And we're like, no, it didn't close. But anyway, Big John Studd left the WWF in 1989 after being frustrated with the money he was making. Yeah. So I guess
to add to that, there was a little bit of legitimate beef between these two. Andre, he was so beloved and everything, but he didn't like other giant wrestlers. And for the most part, if he didn't like you, no matter what size you were, he didn't hide it, Really? And so maybe as far as the big guys go, maybe he was protecting himself. Maybe he's nervous that he'd be replaced. But he and Big John Studd, for working together as much as they did, they were not the closest of friends.
Well, I can kind of see that. Like in the ghost hunting world, if there's a girl that pops up that looks like me, I'm like, hey, she's taking my look. So I'm going to get replaced. I got replaced a long time ago. It's fine. But in the beginning, I thought they said that Andre was from Chernobyl. And so I was like, well, no wonder he's so big. There was some radiation involved. But then it was somewhere else in France or something. But,
Grenoble, I think.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah. And Justin, they picked the shortest ref on the payroll for this match because he looked like a baby. He looked like a little kid standing in that.
When he was standing next to some other guys, I was like, oh, they don't seem that big. And then they put the ref there. I was like, oh. Here we go.
He had to be like 5'3". Yeah. Well, I got some wrestle stats of my own, Justin.
Oh,
I got my
wrestle stats.
Oh. Yeah, because WWE states that Omos is 7'3", so he's technically an inch shorter than Andre by WWE standard. But Andre weighs about 50 pounds more than Omos. So look at me and my stats. Wow. Because I wanted to, because Andre looks so big, I wanted to compare when I see Omos. So it's weird. I'm like, is Omos actually 7'3" or is he 6'11" because WWE adds 4 inches? I don't know.
Right.
Yeah. But I will say this match was slow as molasses. There was a lot of bear hugging.
Yeah, and I noticed the same thing, which I guess you can kind of expect from 2 7-foot guys. They're not going to be flying all over the place, but somehow the crowd was really into this because of the stipulations, I guess, that if Andre lost, he'd have to retire. But they keep yelling, slam, slam, slam. So they whatever got them into this, it worked.
I think it was just the size gimmick of it. I think they were just so excited because, back then you can't Google a picture of the world's tallest man,
Right.
And so that crowd went absolutely insane when Andre body slammed Big John. It was the loudest pop of the night, in my opinion.
And it was so fun that Andre grabbed the duffel bag full of money and was just throwing it out at the crowd and everything before Bobby Heenan stole it back. But did you notice that just a little bit after this, Jesse Ventura would refer to that as the slam heard around the world, which is interesting because just 2 years later, Hulk Hogan slamming Andre at WrestleMania 3 would become known as the slam heard around the world. So it was an interesting call from Jesse Ventura there.
That is weird. Yeah, because I always thought of Hogan being involved. You're right. And so I guess because Hogan was such a big star, they gave him the phrase. But Andre the Giant did win that match in just under 6 minutes. So good for him. We go backstage. Gene is backstage with Andre, and he's just so lovable. No freaking idea what he said, but I liked him anyway. He was just like, "Oh, I'm not gonna win." I was like, "That's great, Andre. Good job, good job." And that's when I noticed that he has very tiny teeth, but really, they're probably like my size teeth. It's just a big face, right?
Yeah.
Back to Alfred Hayes, who's doing his job of holding that floor down, Justin. He gets the kiss from the fabulous Moolah and Leilani Kai on their way to the ring. At this point, I'm super excited because we're getting women, but we go to the pre-recorded interviews. Mean Gene is with Wendy Richter and Cyndi Lauper. The difference between their accents, man, it was throwing me off. Lauper's New York accent, Richter's Southern accent. It's like a verbal representation of the Mason-Dixon line. Just like, what? Gene interviews the fabulous Moolah and Leilani Kai. Leilani says, "I'm going to come back to the dressing room with my hand in a victor."
With my hand in a victor.
What does that mean?
Good. Right after that, we should have gotten Doink Squeaky again.
No, wait.
My hand in a victor.
Well, let's go to this women's match, which I think, did they refer to the women's match as the main event? I swear I heard it.
Hear that, but they also didn't seem to know the name of the championship because I heard it as the women's championship, the ladies championship. Yeah. So it shows you just how important it was to them at the time. Leilani Kai, she's now 67 years old, just had a match in 2015 somewhere in Florida, but she began training with the fabulous Moolah right out of high school, and then later formed a tag team with Judy Martin known as the Glamour Girls. We're going to see them as a tag team on a pay-per-view later on in our little journey here. Had a few matches in WCW in the early 90s, really nothing substantial though.
Leilani Kai. So is she like Dakota's mom?
Dakota Kai? No. No, she wasn't. In fact, she was named that by Fabulous Moolah because Moolah thought that she looked Hawaiian. And so she gave her that name. Yeah. Okay, fine. Right? Wendy Richter on the other side of the ring, still with us at the age of 63, had her last match in 2005 in Pennsylvania. But here's the interesting thing. She trained at Fabulous Moolah's school, and one of her trainers was Leilani Kai, who she's in the ring with here. So funny how things work out. She now works as a physical therapist, and she was, as some people might know, some people may not, she was the victim of the original WWF screw job later this same year. So we'll talk about that a little bit later, but it's an interesting story.
Okay, well, now I have to ask, is this the Wendy Richter that Tony Storm is always calling out in her new character? This is the Wendy Richter. This
is the one that she refers to that she wants to beat down. And I think they even asked Wendy Richter if she had any interest. And of course, I doubt it'll ever happen, but it was a funny thing for Tony Storm to pull out of nowhere.
Like, I'm just surprised Wendy didn't, I mean, she doesn't even have to wrestle. She can just come on and talk smack. I mean, it's a paycheck, right?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Right.
I would do it.
Yeah. So to me, and I don't mean this in a mean way at all. I'd never say it in a mean way. The Fabulous Moolah always looked old. Mm-hmm. Like in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. She just always looked old. And it's not one of those things where we've talked about, yeah, everybody just looked older back then. I don't know what it was. Am I wrong here?
No, she's like the Arn Anderson of the women, just kind of. Right. And you know what I think it might be, Justin? There was something about her that reminded me of Mimi, like our grandma. And so maybe that's why we thought she looked older, because we thought of our grandma. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, no, I could totally see that. Yeah.
But Justin, this is our first women's match that we've reviewed on Wrestle Recap.
You know, you had mentioned that, and I was like, wait, there was one on a Starrcade, right? And I went back and looked. No, this is the first one, but don't get used to it because we are going to go literal years without WWF having a women's match on a paper. It's really kind of odd. But also Cyndi Lauper, of course, is out there with Wendy Richter in her corner. Kids, if you don't know who Cyndi Lauper is, we know her as one of the biggest pop stars of the 80s. And you know her from the commercials for Cosmetics.
Oh, God, so, that's her?
That's her. Yeah.
Oh,
talking
Lord.
about her psoriasis. Yes.
Oh, great. That's
how
sexy.
far we've come in 40 years.
Well, you were talking about the championship and what this is called. I noticed the ladies, the women's, but what it really should be called is the Little Miss Southern Belle Championship, because with the accents and the hairdos, I figured they were just going to bring like their best casserole to the ring and let the ref just pick which one he likes more. I mean, golly. And it was weird because you see these women like in WWE and AEW and they just look so like glamorous and stuff, but these women, like their hairdos and stuff, maybe it was just the time, they just looked like a couple of moms that left their kitchen and came and joined a wrestling show.
Which kind of like what you just said, it's because our mom looked like that when we were growing up, you know?
Exactly.
So we see her, we just see them that way. It's so funny you say that.
You're right.
But, going back to the whole theme music thing, I'm not completely sure on this, but I believe Wendy Richter and Cyndi Lauper, they entered to Cyndi Lauper's song, Girls Just Want to Have Fun.
Oh, cool.
And actually, if you watch that music video, Captain Lou Albano is in the music video as Cyndi Lauper's dad. And so that was part of this whole relationship that MTV and WWF had at the time. It was a great relationship they had for a few years there.
Did he have a safety pin in his face?
I think he left that one off. I think he took it out. That is, special occasions and all.
That is one of the most horrible things I've ever seen. And not because I'm like squeamish. It's because it is the most distracting thing because you can't tell what the hell it is. Okay, I'm off the soapbox now.
Michelle, I didn't want to tell you, but I happen to have a safety pin here and I figured we could do a demonstration.
Go for it, Justin.
No,
you can do it. Okay, so what took so long to get this match started? Did something happen?
Yeah, I have no idea. Whatever happened, it must have been off camera. I don't know if they're having like some difficulty, if they're trying to talk something through real quick. But yeah, no, once they were in the ring, it was like, dude, ring the bell, wrestle.
And I noticed that, not Wendy, Leilani Kai was over in the corner of the ring, like messing with something maybe. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But I I guess because women weren't like the most exciting thing in wrestling in the 80s, did you notice that they were just wearing swimsuits?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just
A lot of
swimsuits.
these 80s matches, it looked like they were wearing swimsuits. I don't know. Maybe they thought that this was a Mimosa Mayhem match. There you go, AEW fans. Throwback right there. Mimosa Mayhem.
I love that match when freaking Ortiz was drowning in the orange juice and stuff. That was fun.
And talking about their clothes, at least in the case of Leilani Kai here, again, it's not HD, so it's kind of hard to tell, but no tights under the swimsuits. Did you notice that?
I did, because as a theater person, like growing up, you always wore tights. Like even if, I was 16 and had the most beautiful skin and legs ever, but you wore tights.
Yeah. And not everybody does it today, but for years, like every woman that you saw on wrestling had like these oddly smooth legs that didn't match the skin tone anywhere else on their body,
Right. And for me, like, and most of the girls I grew up with, it wasn't about looking smooth or anything. It was more covering yourself and feeling more comfortable. And so as a wrestler, I would think you'd want to wear tights, because if your swimsuit slips, they're not going to see anything,
Right. Now that makes sense. Now right off the bat, this match starts and these ladies, they're like out there to prove something. I mean, this was not lame. They are taking good bumps. They're selling. They have some nice mat wrestling. I was really impressed right out of the gate here, especially for an 80s women's match.
Oh yeah, and Wendy Richter had some really cool moves. But I got a question. After the match, why was Fabulous Moolah? She just kept like flopping herself on the ground. Like, why was she doing that?
I did not see that.
You didn't? I think it was after the match. Yeah, she just like got in the ring and like tripped and fell, and then she was getting up and then fell again. It was just flopping around everywhere. I had no idea what that was.
Moolah wasn't getting enough attention. And if you know the stories about Moolah, that could very well be true.
That makes sense. Well,
yeah.
At one point, Wendy went down for the pin and it was only a 2 count. And I thought, like, get out of the way, ref, because the ref was in the way. And I felt like Wendy couldn't get up. And then Wendy just shoved him out of the way and got back up.
Yeah, it was like a total heel move. And Wendy Richter is the ultimate baby face here. That was really surprising. Like, damn, what got into you, Wendy? Jeez.
I think it's because he wouldn't move. Like, because she didn't have a way to get up because she was up against the rope. So it was like, which she could have just shoved Leilani. But no, the ref was in the way. And I even saw that.
Yeah. Well, the crowd, they were really behind this. I mean, even when the ref would count a pin, they were counting along with it out loud. And what's crazy is women's wrestling hadn't been allowed in Madison Square Garden until 1972, just 13 years before this. So they had seen women's wrestling before, but it was used as more of an attraction, as something like extra that you got rather than an official part of the card. So it was a big deal for them to be a part of this.
It wasn't allowed. Ugh, gross.
Well, and I'll tell you another odd one. I don't know what year this ended, but for a long time in Madison Square Garden, they didn't allow wrestlers with a mask.
That's weird.
Yeah. So I've actually seen videos of, like, I forget which guy from Mexico it was, but he had a mask on, but the face was cut out.
That's dumb.
So it covered the rest of his head. It was kind of like, then why wear the mask? But
that's dumb.
Anyway.
Well, the ending was a little funky of this match. Yeah. The way Leilani kind of jumped down off the top rope, I feel like most people would think that was a botch these days. It just looked a little sloppy.
Yeah, and you could tell what they were trying to do. Leilani Kai, she was trying to go for a crossbody off the top, and then Richter was supposed to roll through and land on top of her for the pin, but they just didn't have the right momentum or the right positioning, and so Richter kind of had to shimmy herself kind of around and back to get on top of Leilani Kai, but she did, and finally got the pin and won the championship.
Yeah, and they knew how to celebrate, Justin. They were jumping and dancing and screaming. Cindy and Wendy both. They were just having a great time. I mean, what can I say? Girls just want to have fun. Hey-o.
Well, and I think that's probably what was playing over the speakers while they were doing this. So it would have been a perfect moment, with that song playing and them finally getting the victory after this year-long war, really. It was really, really a lot of fun. Go backstage to the Mean Gene, who meets up with Wendy Richter and Cyndi Lauper to celebrate their victory.
Well, and the lipstick on Cindy's teeth was killing me. And I didn't know if it was like intentional, but I don't think like that kind of humor was a thing in the 80s. So I don't think it was intentional. And she's just looking in the camera smiling. And I know the homegirl watched it later and was like, oh, why didn't anyone tell me? But then they bring out the championship belt and that thing is so silly. It's so tiny.
It was really small. It's like they threw gold paint on like a teacup saucer and just glued it to a belt. It's
so
like,
accurate.
remember when AEW first came out with their first women's championship, and it was like that tiny little plate in the center. Is like, that's a championship. I know a cowboy down the street who's got that in his closet. He wears it with his jeans. Like,
no joke.
Man, it was the same thing here. But then we go back to the ring. Howard Finkel. It's time for the main event. He announces the special guest ring announcer, former New York Yankees manager Billy Martin. And the New York crowd is happy to see Billy Martin. And just off to the side, we see legendary wrestler, first ever Intercontinental Champion, and future right-hand man of Vince McMahon, Pat Patterson, get into the ring as the referee. And that's about the time that we get the announcement of our special guest timekeeper, brought to the ring by the New York City Rockettes, Liberace.
Yes, and Liberace was doing a kick line with the Rockettes. It was fabulous. Like, I've always heard about Liberace, but oh my gosh, just seeing him on this pay-per-view, I want to be his best friend. He seemed like the most fun person.
And it looked like he was having an absolute blast out there. And like the entire time, they would even like cut away to him during the match. And he just looked like he was having the time of his life. For those who don't know, Liberace, he was a longtime musician, even had his own TV show called The Liberace Show. For a long time, there was actually a Liberace museum in Las Vegas. It shut down about 15 years ago, but it was just like a mile or two off the strip on Tropicana, I believe. Unfortunately, this was the mid-'80s, and a few months after WrestleMania, Liberace was secretly diagnosed with HIV. And about 2 years after this WrestleMania in 1987, he died from complications related to HIV. But what a legacy he left behind. You can actually go see his car collection. It's still there in Las Vegas. Pretty fun.
That's cool. Well, that breaks my heart. I'm so sad.
Yeah. But Billy Martin, he then announces the outside enforcer for the main event, the one and only Muhammad Ali. And what a big deal this was to have Muhammad Ali come out for this. Now, we saw Joe Frazier as a referee at Starrcade 84 just a few months before this. So could this have been yet another case of Vince McMahon trying to one-up Jim Crockett Promotions by having the greatest of all time there?
Of course. It's a WWE thing, because even now, you know, this week they just announced WrestleMania is going to London, probably at Wembley. And it's like, even now when WWE smells a little competition, they got to go do it, but do it bigger, you know?
Sure, yeah. Well, and so we have Pat Patterson. He's going to be the inside the ring referee, while Muhammad Ali was on the outside, which is probably better, because if you have Muhammad Ali in there, you should still have somebody who knows the business like Pat Patterson there to help him out. But it really didn't make any difference. They were both very involved in this match. And finally, we get the bagpipe band. They start making their way down the aisle. Still gives me chills every time that they do that. Reminds me of Piper and all the great things he did. But he makes his way down the aisle along with Paul Orndorff, his tag team partner, and Cowboy Bob Orton. And then we get the classic shot that we've seen on so many video packages and montages of Hulk Hogan and Mr. T and Jimmy Snuka coming down that back hallway at Madison Square Garden to go out into the arena. In the background, just off to the side, standing in the doorway, a very young Vince McMahon is standing there looking on, making sure everything is going right. Kind of fun to spot him back there. And then we go into the match.
Yes,
Let's talk about these guys just real quick. The main event, Hulk Hogan, still with us, of course, today at the age of 70 years old, almost 71 here in just about a week or two. His last match was actually at a TNA house show in Manchester, England. He was trained by Hiro Matsuda, who he had actually been spotted in a gym by the Briscoe brothers, Jack and Jerry, and got Hiro Matsuda to train him. Now, in his original WWF run from 1979 to 81, he spent most of that time as a heel. And then he went back to the AWA under Vern Gagne, and he was scooped up by Vince McMahon after he'd kind of perfected this big, incredible Hulk Hogan character. His partner, Mr. T, 72 years old today. His pro wrestling debut was this match, WrestleMania. First one ever. And his last match was actually in 1994 at WCW Starrcade. Now, in between his first match and his last match, do you know how many matches he had?
How many?
2.
Oh.
2. Yeah.
Interesting.
So a 4-match career for Mr. T. He first met Hulk Hogan during the filming of Rocky III, which was released in 1982. And he was, of course, more known as an actor than anything else. He was on the A-Team. That's where he got a lot of fame in the 80s. And Hulk Hogan, he claims that he personally saved this main event as security wouldn't let Mr. T's entourage into the building, and Mr. T was going to leave, but then Hulk, he talked him into staying. Now, that is Hulk Hogan talking, and Hulk's anecdotes come with a little container that is just the right size for a grain of salt. So you might want to use it. Just saying. Paul Orndorff, we just lost him a few years ago at the age of 71, but he was still wrestling here and there all the way up to 2017. A lot of people don't know this. He was actually selected by the New Orleans Saints in the 12th round of the 1973 NFL Draft. He never got any play time. He left the team before the season even started. In the later years, in the 80s, he was injured in a match, I believe, with Hulk Hogan, and it would lead to an injury with his arm and his neck, which would later on down the line lead to his right arm being smaller than his left arm, not as muscular, due to atrophy. It was a noticeable thing that you could see later on in his career, but he was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2005. So fantastic career for Paul Orndorff, stretched years and years. Roddy Piper, we're going to talk some more about him next week because he's got yet another big match. And with such a big career, I mean, we're going to see him plenty over the years. So we'll get to him. Mr. T, what did you think?
He was not bad at all. Mr. T, it was kind of like when Bad Bunny showed up in WWE. Like, we didn't expect much, but like he went above and beyond. And I always appreciate when celebrities do that, like Bad Bunny. And I'm sorry, I think Logan Paul is amazing. So
Logan Paul should quit what he's doing outside of wrestling and just do wrestling because he was born for it.
Oh, absolutely. And so, yeah, Mr. T, he wasn't bad.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, there's a lot of chaos in this match and everybody wanting to get into the ring, even Muhammad Ali. And Jimmy Snuka even got up on the top rope. And I thought he was going to jump and splash on everybody, but he just kind of jumped down. It was like he pushed the circle button to just jump down into the ring without doing a move, you know. But it should be pointed out, too, that much like Andre and Big John Studd, Roddy Piper and Mr. T, they didn't get along backstage. Yeah, Roddy kind of felt like Mr. T hadn't paid any dues or had no reason to be there in the main event of the biggest wrestling show of all time. So they did have some legitimate beef between them.
Does he know who he's wrestling for? Like Vince and WWE, WWF, that's like their best thing, which is why I appreciate when celebrities actually try.
Yeah, it's Piper. You never know with Piper. He's the hot rod.
Right. So I've got a question. At some point, like I guess kind of early on in the match, like some chaos ensues and Roddy and Orndorff left and then they came back. But like the Hulk Hogan's like, no, come on, come back. And so like, did they just get mad and leave? Like, and then the refs started counting them out. Like what happened there? I
think that was one of those things like, oh, we've had enough of this. We're leaving. Forget about it. You know, the old heel thing. And then they get coaxed into coming back, you know.
Okay. I thought I was I missed something.
But you're right. There was some chaos here. Things kind of felt like jumbled at times. Like you could tell the story they were trying to tell in the ring, but it just kind of got a little muddy at times.
Yeah.
Still, this was more about spectacle than story at this point.
I will say the crowd started chanting T, T, T over and over. And I was like, yeet. Yeet, yeet. It totally, I was expecting the yeet dance from Jey Uso to break out.
with the money in the bank and the drone over the ring, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, of course. Of course. We got another Gorilla-ism on this one. When somebody gets blindsided, Gorilla says, "Oh, just Pearl Harbored him." And I was like, oh, I don't think we can say that one today, but I don't know. Maybe on Michael Cole's last day, he'll say somebody got Pearl Harbored, but ouch.
It was funny because we heard that and Mark and I were like, did you hear that? Like, dang. And so I didn't know if that was like a one-time use type thing. So I Googled it and I was like, oh, okay, it's a wrestling term. So I didn't even put it in my notes because I thought it was something that people continued to use a lot. But I was like, so a sneak attack is a Pearl Harbor?
Mainly Gorilla Monsoon. Others did, but it was one of his, you know.
Goodness. Well, again, with the clothes, this comment is not about clothing or wardrobe at all. Oh. Please, Hulk Hogan, please put on an extra pair of trunks because I could see the outline of everything. And this was before high def. Didn't like seeing that at that indie show we went to like a week or two ago. There was a guy who needed more coverage and all of us in our section were just like, oh God, why? I think the crowd started chanting granny panties at him. So that was fun. But yeah, man, Hulk Hogan. And I feel like he knew what he was doing. He was just being gross.
Could be. When he talks about his 24-inch pythons, he's talking about his arms, not 24-inch pythons otherwise.
Well, Bob Orton goes off the top rope to help out Orndorff with Hogan, but they kind of shift and Orton accidentally takes out Orndorff and not Hulk Hogan. So with Orndorff knocked out on the ground, Hulk gets the pin. So is this ending going to cause like problems between Orton and Orndorff going forward? Because they've been besties. So is this going to cause issues?
It will. And you know what? I'm going to leave that right there for right now because the next episode that we do, we're covering the Wrestling Classic and we're going to see a little bit more. So we'll leave that one right there.
Okay. Well, Hulk Hogan and Mr. T won it in 13 minutes and 34 seconds.
Yes, they did. So there it is, WrestleMania.
Yeah. So what happened after the pay-per-view, Justin?
So after this pay-per-view, Tito Santana, he continues his feud with Greg Valentine and eventually wins the Intercontinental Championship in July. Good for him. King Kong Bundy, he forms a tag team with Big John Studd, and they would have some matches against the team of Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan, who were teamed up to be best friends at the time. Nikolai and the Iron Sheik, they would hold the tag team titles for a few months into the summer, and then they lost them back to the U.S. Express. And then later this year, we mentioned this earlier, Wendy Richter would lose the women's championship to the Fabulous Moolah, the original WWF Screwjob. Just real quick, you can look this up, but Wendy Richter was upset with her payoffs and had gone to Vince McMahon about it. She goes out to the ring for a match where she's facing somebody called the Spider Lady, which is a woman under a hood. The Spider Lady rolls her up, and the ref counts a really fast 3 count, even though Wendy Richter kicked out at 1, and awards the title to the Spider Lady, who gets her hood pulled off, and it is the Fabulous Moolah. And Wendy Richter was out of the company after that.
Wow. So, like, she didn't even know it was coming.
No.
That's so crappy.
Yeah.
That is so crappy. Wow. Yeah.
And also, just to wrap up what happened after this pay-per-view, Paul Orndorff, he did align with Hulk Hogan. Mr. T would actually even remain relevant to the whole story, and they would feud with Roddy Piper and Bob Orton. And all of that would lead to another interesting match at WrestleMania 2 a year from now.
Fantastic. So what are your final thoughts on the pay-per-view, Justin? WrestleMania 1.
You know, even if you had problems with anything in the ring or the production or anything like you have to, after watching 2 Starcades and watching this, you quickly realize this is going down the entertainment route and NWA and JCP are going down the wrestling route. And while JCP was doing a wrestling show that happened to have cameras, WWF was doing a TV show where there happened to be some wrestling. And I think that's why they went down the 2 paths they did. And I enjoyed it. It's the pageantry and the flashiness that WWF became known for to this day.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think that It also, when you're playing toward a TV show versus just wrestling that's being filmed, kind of like you said, it makes it just flow a lot better. It makes it more exciting, more cohesive, because I'm not going to lie, Starrcade 84, it dragged, man. It really dragged. And I feel like even if I knew the talent, it still would have dragged. So, yeah, I mean, obviously it's the whole sports entertainment thing, but I enjoyed WrestleMania 1. This was my first time watching it, and it's just so fun to get to see who came over from Starrcade already, but just kind of the, where it all started. So, and that's why we're doing this podcast, Justin. So
that's right.
But Justin, we've got SummerSlam 2024 coming up, and I know we're running a little bit over time, but I want to get our predictions out there. You are so good at this. You are so good at this, and it makes me mad. But okay, we're going to get through these. So Bo Dallas versus Chad Gable. Who you got?
Don't feel like you can afford to have Bo Dallas lose on his first outing, especially when they've been terrorizing Chad Gable. So Bo Dallas.
Bo Dallas for me as well. Same reasoning. Bayley versus Nia Jax.
Nia Jax. I think they've done nothing with Bayley's championship run that is interesting at all. And as I said, when I said that Nia Jax would win Queen of the Ring, there's nothing that will make Nia Jax more annoying to fans as a heel than a crown and now a championship.
I fully agree with that. I think Bayley needs to want something to be more interesting. And like you said, they haven't done anything with Bayley. So I agree. This one's a little bit tougher, Justin. Liv Morgan versus Rhea Ripley.
I think you stick with Liv.
I do too.
I think that she's got something that she's hiding in her pocket. And this whole thing is about more than the championship to her. It's either about dom or control. And I do think this is just a maybe thing. I think that dom may be switching sides here pretty soon.
I think it's happening at SummerSlam.
Yeah,
100%.
Me too.
Yep.
Me too.
We talk about these predictions. WWE is so much easier for me to predict versus like AEW. I never know who's going to win because they put turns on us. But this one I think is really dividing the internet. Logan Paul versus LA Knight. Who do you think is going to take this?
I think it's got to be LA Knight. I mean, Logan Paul has been the champion since last year. And LA Knight, he had a chance at a title a while back, didn't get it. And I think it's time. I think you got to do it.
I think you have to put gold on LA Knight or the fans are going to revolt. At least I will, because I am such an LA Knight fan. And I feel like he should be going after Cody's belt because I think he's that great. But Justin, a lot of the internet thinks Logan Paul's going to win. And I think that's weird.
Let's see. We will know 6 days from now who was right.
Right. So Sami Zayn versus Braun Breaker versus Ilya Dragunov. I got Braun Breaker, man.
I got Braun as well. I could see the case for any of them winning, but if you're going to have him lose a chance at it before once, what reason would he have to have another chance after this one? So I think you got to pull the trigger. And Sammy's so popular. He doesn't need a belt. He's set. He's fine.
I agree. They've just been building up Braun Breaker so much. And then also, I just have to say, Braun Breaker, you ever notice he looks like a 6-year-old? Like a really, like his face looks like a 6-year-old on a giant man's body. I'm going to ask you, I'm going to go a little out of order. Cody Rhodes versus Solo Sikoa.
Cody,
duh. Okay.
There could be some interesting story things happen around it, but ultimately the winner, Cody.
Oh, I agree. So I saved this one for last. Damian Priest versus Gunther.
Got to go with my boy Gunther.
See, I want him to win and I want to go with him, but I feel like this is the swerve that could happen. I think Damian Priest could win just because he hasn't had the belt that long in the realm of wrestling. And he hasn't really, it's like he's finally getting to the point where he could do something interesting. And so I think they could keep it on him, or shenanigans could happen and he ends up keeping it. I don't know. If you put a gun to my head, I'd say Gunther, but I just don't know on that one. I don't know.
That's okay. That's okay. That one is I think that one is more 50-50 in my head than anything. Yeah.
Yeah. So then we've got, which we already kind of touched on, Drew McIntyre versus CM Punk. I'm going Drew. I'm
going Drew as well. Again, that's another 50-50 one, but I think you got to go with Drew this time around and let them go again at another pay-per-view.
I agree. All right, Justin, tell us about Wrestle Stats and where they can find you.
Wrestle Stats, you can find on Twitter /Wrestle Stats every single day. I'm posting stuff on Wrestle Stats. Win-loss records, rematches, title matches, the statistics about all of those, how long it's been since certain people have been on TV for AEW, WWE, TNA, ROH, and New Japan. You can find it on twitter.com/WrestleStats. Where can they find you?
You can find me on the Twitter X at Michelle Tater. That's really the best way to talk to me. I do a lot of live tweeting. I try to answer everyone who asks me a question. You can ask me anything about football, wrestling, ghost hunting, whatever. I always like meeting people, and that's kind of the place I do it. So, Justin.
Sounds good. Well, next week we have another big show. We're sticking with the WWF. For our 4th episode, we are covering the next pay-per-view in their canon, WWF Wrestling Classic, a one-night tournament, and there's also a WWF Championship match snuck in the middle of it.
Oh, snap. Well, Justin, it's going to be classic.
It is.